All right, I'd like to welcome you here on behalf of the City of Pasadena. My name is Chris Markarian. I'm the Deputy Director, City Engineer, representing the Department of Public Works. And today I have with me our project team, including our consultant, as well as our client, which is, of course, the Department of Library Services, and we have been working on this project for some time. So the intent here today is to give you a little bit of a historic background of how this project got initiated, and moving forward where we are today, which is in the preliminary design phase, and also a lot of the outreach here today, the focus is going to be on programming. Two things that we have been tasked by our city council. So with that, we can do introductions as we go along. And I also want to make mention that there are translation services available. So anyone who has a need to please ask our staff. We have Teo Sierra, who's the project manager. Teo, you want to raise your hand there, and we'll be happy to assist anyone. Are you all able to hear me okay? I'm getting a little bit of feedback on my end. Okay, all right. I'll just ignore my own voice. All right, wonderful. So I have been with the city about 7 years and have been involved on this project from day one. As the library was to near its 100-year anniversary, we decided as a city and the library department to take a look and assess the condition of the library. We started with a lot of the safety and fire alarm system, and as well as fire sprinkler system for the building. So we hired on a consultant back in 2020 to do that. So even before the Central Library became a project, there was another project called Building Systems Assessment. And as a part of that, we also brought on a structural engineering consultant to look at the condition of the building structure. And it's at that time that we really searched and located the original plans, construction plans of the library, and discovered that the building was, the walls, all of the gravity walls, are unreinforced masonry. And what that means is, as of 1930s, after the earthquake, any buildings built in the state of California, unreinforced masonry was basically outlawed. It was no longer allowed by code. And this building, built in the mid-1920s, we found to be of unreinforced masonry construction. Now, that being said, this is a Myron Hunt design building, a renowned architect, and the construction was very much unique of its time, and we found that, it was very, I guess, innovative, I would say, for its time in construction. And our consultant will go in a little more detail about it. But given the finding, we had a discussion with the city manager's office as well as our city's building official. And in compliance with our unreinforced masonry ordinance requirement, which states that buildings must be retrofitted and or demolished, we had to, given the fact that we have over 900 people using this building on a daily basis, the decision was made to vacate the building, and until such time that the building is retrofitted and made safe for the public in case of an earthquake event. So that is where that takes us to back in May of 2021. Moving forward, our first task was to do a preliminary analysis. We found that we wanted to do additional materials testing. We did geotechnical investigation work, and we brought on board a second structural engineering firm to do an independent reevaluation of the preliminary structural analysis. And they, in fact, concurred with the findings. And we, at that point, put out a request for proposal to solicit services of a comprehensive design team, meaning we wanted a well-established consulting firm with a proven record in retrofit and design of historically significant libraries and buildings of this magnitude and significance. As you all know, the Central Library is the really cornerstone to the Bennett plan for the Civic Center and the first building that was constructed as part of Pasadena's Civic Center. So moving forward with all the due diligence, which took about a year's time, we also decided to put together a technical oversight committee as well as a programming committee. So the Technical Oversight Committee was one that was assembled by our mayor, Victor Gordo, and it comprised of seismologists and educators in the field of seismology and engineering from Caltech, as well as several principal engineers from various reputable firms in Southern California. In addition, we work closely with Pasadena Heritage, as well as we had architects from the community and the American Institute of Architects, AIA, the Southern California chapter, Foothill chapter, included as part of the steering committee, who really had a very engaged role in helping us progress through not only the preliminary analysis findings and reviewing and being able to advise us as well as report to the mayor, but also they help vet through all of the various retrofit schemes. That was our first task, was to come up with a viable retrofit concept so that based on that we can move forward with everything else, with the design. That being said, we hired on at that point our design consultant that is here and will be addressing you shortly. And with that, we also, the library and the city manager at the time, put together a programming committee because as was discussed by city council, the fact that the library was closed, the fact that we were going to be doing this retrofit work, it was an opportune time to take a look at what the needs are of the community, not only current needs, but also needs moving forward. So the vision for this project in general is to make sure that we bring this building up to current standards, in a sense, to extend its life and make sure that it's put to great use by the community for the next 100 years plus. So with that, what I do want to let you know a little bit about where we're headed next. Our structural analysis work is continuing. We are doing some additional testing right now, and we're going through all of the programming phase, and we have the library here who can speak to that. And going forward for next year, early next year, we will be presenting the schematic design and some of the programming findings, what we heard from you, to our city council and move forward. But one critical decision that was made back in September was a direction and from city council on an earthquake retrofit scheme. And that's where the schematic design is taking shape based on that scheme. And there's more to come on that. As you know, the most important thing is to reopen this library as soon as we can for the community. And what you see there is we anticipate completing design by the end of this year so that we may, at the same time, look for grant funding and other ways of funding construction of the project. A little bit about the funding aspect. We have acquired state funds earmarked by the state for the design phase of the project. However, the construction of the project remains unfunded at this time, and we are certainly have a team of consultants as well as the city working to and applying for grants at both the state and federal level. Beyond that, we can maybe talk about additional next steps towards the end of this presentation. So with that, I'd like to ask the library, Tim McDonald, Director of Library Services, to continue.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to make sure I adjust the microphone. Can you hear me? Yes? Great, thanks. My name is Tim McDonald. I'm the Library Director for the City of Pasadena. Briefly, just want to thank Pasadena High School for hosting us here today. I want to thank Pasadena Media for recording today's event. It's a busy holiday season, and we did not expect a full house. We've got 1,000 extra seats, I think, here today. But people that couldn't be here tonight will have the opportunity to watch this meeting, thanks to Pasadena Media being here. And most of all, thank you to all of you being here. You're an essential part of this process, so we get this project right. We're talking about a very important building in the city, and we want to have a transparent process that's really engaged with the community every step of the way. I'm going to talk a little bit about the vision that was set for this project. A few slides back, can I ask you to, perfect, thanks Deborah. A few slides back, Chris showed that long brown bar on the timeline that was the analysis of the building, really checking and double checking that the building official had made the right decision on the need to red tag the building and retrofit it. And then parallel with that, there was a green stripe that said programming. We knew it was very important to take this opportunity while the library was closed to start a community-driven examination of this process and really check in with the community on what they wanted to see happen. How can we address the current needs of the community and the future needs so that the next 100 years of this building are really forward-thinking? So the first step in that process was creating a community programming committee that was formed even before the Gruen Associates design firm was awarded its contract. September of 2022, the city manager appointed members to that committee, and their work began. And the mission of that committee is there on the screen for you, to recommend how Central Library spaces can be reimagined to draw more people into the building and to continue to serve as a primary gathering space for the community, and reimagining the central as the central building in the library system. We're very fortunate that we have a library system with 9 library branches, but just like a tree's branches, they can't function effectively alone. The model of this library is to have a centralized library system to support those neighborhood branches. The committee that I just mentioned was charged with thinking about how that central library, as I said before, could meet the needs of the community moving forward. I'll talk about that a little bit. Could I go to the next slide? Yes. These are the 11 members that volunteered their time and expertise to the project, representing a wide section of the community, representing nonprofits, education, the media, historic preservation, library professionals. And over the course of several months, several meetings, they really dug into the question of how will we best serve the community moving forward? How can we reimagine spaces so that we are thinking ahead for the community? Go to the next slide. That group came out with a set of 8 key recommendations that are listed on the screen now. Anything in this presentation that I'm moving too fast on, just know that this is all recorded and there is a project webpage that you can refer to, including the entire report that this committee published in February of 2023. Key recommendations from the community for Central Library were to maintain the historic character of this beloved building. That was their top recommendation. Design spaces that better meet the needs of 21st century libraries and create positive user experiences. Make improvements to accessibility. If you're someone who's ever tried to wheel a baby carriage, a stroller, or a wheelchair, or been on crutches and tried to get into the building, you know that that's an area where we have some opportunities to make improvements. It's important to the Community Programming Committee to remain true to the mission of the library as an information center that is free and welcoming to all. Responding to community needs and to reach out to the community to identify further needs. It was very important to the community that this community engagement did not end with them, but started with them. And that's part of the reason we are meeting tonight, and we'll talk a little bit more about the community engagement plan that's been created as a result of the vision of the programming committee. Also to consider new and innovative ways of offering service and to promote all that the library has to offer. To supplement the vision of the programming committee, the committee charged staff with conducting further outreach to the community, like today's event, so that we're not just reaching people that are current library users, but also reaching parts of the community that are not current library users. So we have a lot of scheduled meetings like tonight to gather input from the community, but we also have pop-up events and are going to places where regular library users might not be to talk to every segment of the community. Let me go to the next. Oh, perfect. Okay. As well as those 8 key recommendations, you're reading my mind,
Sorry.
Deborah. Thank you. You're perfect. The committee also gave us a list of cautions that they wanted us to keep in mind, and those are listed on the screen now. Don't just provide any library, provide the very best library. There's a great deal of pride felt in the community for Central Library. The library system as a whole celebrates its 140th birthday in 2024. The library system's older than the city itself, was formed before the city incorporated. And I can tell you as a library director, every time I meet someone and tell them what my job is, I will hear a story about fond memories of going to Central Library and time spent with their grandparents teaching them how to read or studying for a college degree. I've met a couple that became engaged at Central Library. There are a lot of really fond memories of this building. So they want to make sure that we don't just have any library, but the very best library. Wanted to make sure we maintain the core mission of the library as an information delivery system that is free and welcoming to all, that we're helping our youngest residents prepare for a healthy and successful life and have academic success, contribute to the economy by helping people on their career journeys, and support for small businesses and learning and literacy. The committee cautioned us to avoid duplicating services that can be better offered other places. So for example, we may partner with other groups to provide services and programs in the library, but not reimagine the job of a librarian. So the example I offer is we're not going to train our staff how to inoculate people with flu shots, but we could certainly provide a room for Huntington Hospital to come and send their nurses over so that we could offer that service for free to the community. So we're going to avoid duplicating services that are better handled by others. We want to find a balance, the committee told us, between dedicated spaces and flexible spaces. We're in a dedicated space. This is an auditorium with fixed seating, but the library should also offer flexible, multi-purpose spaces, the community told us, that could accommodate many functions. And we will be seeing some examples of the current design scheme that addresses that wish. And then finally, avoid and be cautious of a kitchen sink mentality. We can't be everything to all people. If we could find a space for a rock climbing wall, that may not be the best use of the space. We have to make sure that we make judicious decisions about what can be in the library. Go to the next one. Thanks, Deborah. Okay, so as I said before, the committee did not want the decisions about programming to end with them. They told us we needed to do further community outreach, and so a robust community engagement plan was developed, and this is some of the feedback that we received from the community that tells us about the types of activities, services, functions that they would like to see in the library. So it's a real wish list. And those green check marks show that the current design scheme is accommodating all of those activities in one way or the other, either with a dedicated space or with a flexible space that could offer each one of those activities. And the exciting part of the presentation will be showing you some renderings of those spaces. Anybody that's interested in the coffee cart that used to grace our courtyard can know that was a piece of feedback we heard from many members of the community and made the list, and we've got space for that when we reopen too. Go to the next one, Deborah. Thanks. And as well as activities, some qualities, services, and functions, activities, events that the community would like to see in the library. And again, we've made the opportunity for these to happen in the current design. And I should say, and I think Deborah will repeat this, the design that we're showing tonight is not a final design, it's just the current version of it, which we are always adapting and evolving based on the input we've received from the community and library staff. I'll add too that laundry list, that wish list that we saw, includes many uses that are already part of the library system. We are not just a depository of books, but we're a community gathering space where, as Chris said earlier, nearly 1,000 people visited every day before our closure. There are opportunities for city-led functions and community events, a space where a community group could come and have a meeting, a performance, an art installation. These are some pictures of past events, and I'll ask you to go to the next slide. And here's just a kind of a sample of what you would have seen in Central Library before we closed. We're talking about a big collection of 30,000 items in Central Library that are free and available to all. Cultural events, author visits, support for school success. In the year before the pandemic, we had 500 events in the Donald Wright Auditorium. One room in the library hosted them. We're truly the living room of the community, and we are hoping to be that again when we reopen. Go to the next one. Thanks. I'm going to turn it over to Deborah, who's going to lead the rest of the presentation, starting with how did the vision that the community programming committee gave us lead to the specific goals and objectives for the project. Thanks, Deborah.
Great.
Thanks, Deborah.
Okay. There's quite a bit taller than me. All right, so hi, my name is Deborah Gerard. I'm a partner at Gruen Associates and the project lead for this design effort. And so this section, we're going to talk about the project goals, including historic characteristics of the building and the outreach we've done to date. So the goals and objectives, once we got on board and once we became familiar with the visioning report that was done by the programming committee and met with our client, we were really able to put together a comprehensive list of project goals and objectives. And it's obviously this project was initiated by the fact that this building is unreinforced masonry, and we had an obligation to improve its seismic performance. But the city also, as Tim has already mentioned, recognized that only looking at that was maybe missing an opportunity to take care of other things that in this building that was 100 years old, or just about 100 years old, that it really deserves to be looked at again. The library and the library system, the offerings that a library has, Tim has mentioned, are very different than what they were 100 years ago. So are the services. Wi-Fi obviously did not exist 100 years ago. The needs for power and the way mechanical systems function, energy efficiency, et cetera. So there are a lot of things that just were not here 100 years ago. And so the city really tasked us to look broadly so that we're not missing an opportunity, that the city's not undertaking this important retrofit and repair and overlook something that was, could easily have been accommodated if we had just looked at it. And so together with our client, we developed this list of the goals and objectives for the project. So the first is the earthquake repairs that are obviously driving this. Second is life safety. So as Chris said, this actually started out as a discovery done during a life safety improvement project. And so we needed to improve the life safety of the building. And that includes the level of earthquake repair too. So life safety deals with the fire systems and the sprinkler systems, but also how resilient the building would or should be, and what's the right balance for this building. Very critical. This is a beloved historic building in the city of Pasadena. This was the first building in the Bennett Plan, which formed the civic core of Pasadena. And so there are 3 buildings in that Bennett Plan: City Hall, the Civic Auditorium, and the Central Library. And this was the first one completed. Very, very critical that we take all appropriate measures to preserve this library. And I'll talk in a second about what that means in historic terms. Accessibility, not something that was really considered 100 years ago, but something that we consider very much now. We want to make sure that there's universal access to this building, and it's not just people who might have specific disabilities, but really helping everyone, whether they have a mobility challenge, whether they're elderly, whether they've got a child in a stroller, whatever the case may be, to be able to utilize this building. And currently the building does not accomplish what it needs to, and so improving its accessibility is a key part of this. We found that it was really important to be a public benefit. A public building needs to be a benefit to the public, and while this building is not occupiable, while it's red tagged, it is not serving its purpose. And so it is critical that we find a way for the public to be able to reoccupy the building as quickly as is reasonable. And that way the patrons can utilize it. We have to mitigate risks. There's a lot of risks in doing renovation projects, and it's important that we're really looking broadly at that. The key risks are schedule delays, which lead to cost increases. And so it is our directive, our mission, to make sure that we're managing the schedule, managing expectations, and delivering on our commitments. Tim mentioned function and taking a look at how the building functions right now. And some of this is functioning for the staff. How do we make the spaces better for the staff to utilize so that they're more efficient in what they do, so that they can then do more things for the patrons of the library? Flexibility, Tim also mentioned that it's really important that spaces have as much flexibility inherent in them so that over the next 50 and 100 years that this building can continue to evolve as the needs of the community evolve. And then lastly, to upgrade outdated technology and critical building systems. It's stunning to us that the 100-year-old mechanical systems are still in use. They are on their last legs. They have well outlived their reasonable lifespan. And this is a good moment. We need to look towards the environment and making sure that we're providing better, more efficient systems in the building, but also providing more power for people who have more things to plug in, and Wi-Fi for the obvious purposes of that. Okay, historic character. Historic Resources Group was a consultant on our team, and they took a deep dive into all the aspects of this building and what made this historic building, and what was really critical that we protect. And they prioritized the things that were character defining in terms of the most character defining, and other things that were non-contributory to its historic listing. The massing and materials are at the top of the list. The outside of the building, absolutely, we need to protect. We are told, don't change the massing, don't change the materials. And what that also means is, to the reasonable extent possible, do not alter the actual historic material that is there. On the inside, organization and finishes are considered the most character defining. And the image that you see here of the Great Hall is repeated in all of the other significant halls in the building. There is built-in wood casework down below, acoustic plaster up above, and cork flooring. Sometimes the flooring is not cork, but this basic partie is repeated in all of these historic rooms, and this is defining the interior of the space. You'll take note that one thing that is not listed and was in the report as non-contributory is the actual substrate. So our consultant told us that things that cannot be seen are not do not rise to the Secretary of Interior standards. And we, of course, being good architects, double-check that to make sure they're telling us the truth. And so it is. So the substrate of the building is not considered to be part of its historic character-defining elements. One other thing that was just remarkable that Myron Hunt did was he integrated air conditioning ductwork into the walls. So at the last community meeting, I know many people who are here attended that as well. And in other presentations, we've really done a dive into the structure of the building. This one is really focused on programming, so we're not spending as much time on that. But I just wanted to give you a little snippet of what this looks like. So the section on the left is the basic structure of the building. And again, this is repeated in all of these main halls. The big, thick red line on the left is about 3 bricks wide. It's considered a wythe of brick. It's made up of 3 bricks wide, about 12 inches. And there's a gap in between, and then there's another red brick line, which is another 3 bricks. So 12 inches of brick, a 12-inch air gap, and another 12 inches of brick. And that air gap isn't continuous. The 2 walls are tied together at various intervals with ribs. But the purpose of that air gap is really important. It was so that air conditioning ducts could be fed through the wall, and therefore come out, have a grill out at the top of the book stack, so the air conditioning comes out of the top. There's a return air opening down at the bottom. And in this manner, this building is air conditioned without you seeing ductwork running around it. Brilliant, brilliant. This is something that is high at the list of character defining and something that we really needed to preserve. In the picture on the right, you'll see we did a little experimentation to carefully remove, document, and store some of the existing woodwork to make sure that what's behind us, behind that woodwork is what we expected, and it's exactly what we expected. There is a duct in every one of these cavities, which is not surprising since there's a grill in every cavity. And you can see the brick on the right is what was covered up by the casework. All right, community outreach. We've done several of these meetings, and we're trying to spread ourselves around the community, and we will continue to do so throughout the next 6 months as we continue to develop the finite details of this project, including pop-ups. And as we got community feedback, we found that it was remarkably consistent with the feedback that the visioning committee gave us. But in addition, almost everybody had a personal connection to the library of one sort or another. When they were a kid, when their grandparents brought them, they're bringing their kids. The number one question we're asked is, when is the library going to open again? People want to use this building, so that's really, really important. They obviously were very concerned that its historic character remain, that in the work that we're doing, that we don't erode that character. But they want better bathrooms. Bathrooms always come up. They want better technology. So they want there to be more current and more modern accommodations while retaining the historic nature of the building. And they said the special events are super critical, as Tim's already kind of covered. All right, so enough of that. That's all the preamble. That was the appetizer. Here's the main course. So this is our in-progress schematic design. I'll take you through some floor plans and then show you some visualizations, and then dive into a little bit of where those special places that Tim showed you with the check marks are in this building. So just for color coding, the pink are elevators, and this building currently has 2 elevators that don't reach all of the spaces in the building. They're very small, and they don't meet any of the current standards for an elevator. And one of them we are maintaining, the one off on the far right near the word law room. It's an existing elevator that will be refurbished. The other 2 are brand new elevators that will be big enough for a stretcher to be in, certainly big enough for a wheelchair, and because this is a library, big enough for employees with library book carts as well. So these will serve the levels all the levels of the building, so that you'll be able to access all spaces with an elevator. That is not something you can currently do, and that's sort of critical if you go back to the accessibility need. In the space that's called Circulation Hall, that's where the current book stacks are, and I'm going to take you quickly through the sequence where you would enter the building. So the way that Myron Hunt designed the building is that you would enter from the south side, and hopefully you'll see my cursor. You ascend a set of stairs, go through this courtyard, ascend another set of stairs into a little vestibule, and then you enter into the Great Hall, which is the big space. Hopefully everyone who's here has been into the library, and you remember the big grand space of the Great Hall. And then currently, this area here is very low height, 7-foot high ceiling height, and this is an area that's filled with stacks. We are proposing to remove those stacks. We need to, so I should point out that almost every intervention we're doing because it's being driven by something else that has to happen anyway, and so we're leveraging the opportunity to do something else with that. So we need to retrofit the walls in this area that's currently got book stacks in it. So we have to take the stacks out, we have to take the shotcrete out. The shotcrete that was put in the 1980s only supports the book stacks, and we have to retrofit those walls so that they're seismically improved as well. And so when we do that, we're gonna not put back the book stacks in quite the same manner, but we're gonna take the opportunity to really open the space up. When we take those book stacks out of that area, up at the top are these skylights. And we realize that by opening the space up and instead of filling it back up with books, if we can ring it with a series of mezzanines and leave the middle open, we'll be able to get light from those skylights all the way down in order to flood this area with light. And one of the reasons we're so interested in this is, so I talked about entering from the south. That's how Myron Hunt originally designed the building. But no, it's not widely used anymore. People who park across the street or take public transit might use it. Anyone who's parking, driving to the library and parking is generally coming in the north entrance. The north entrance did not exist when Myron Hunt originally designed it. It was a loading dock. So it's been repurposed into a north entrance, but we're proposing to make it a better north entrance. And so there's a staircase here that comes off of the parking. A little later in the presentation, I'll show you how we make that accessible. And clearing out this vestibule so that it's a bigger, better vestibule, akin to the one that was on the south, and then emerging into the circulation hall. So You go from a staircase into a vestibule, into a big volume space. That's what happens on the south. That's what we're proposing is also done on the north, so that you have, it's not the same experience, but trying to balance out that experience and provide an equivalent experience. So we've added an elevator in that location, very easy for people to see as they're walking in, so that they'll have great intuitive wayfinding. They'll know how to get to an elevator and up to the other levels. And there's also staircases that take you up to the other levels as well. And I will show you those other levels in a moment. But first, going down, so this is the lower level, which is, has the lowest level of that stack area. So I didn't point out, but I will in a subsequent image, that we're proposing to put an opening in that main level so that the light from the skylights can transcend all the way down to this lower level. Myron Hunt envisioned 4 levels of stacks. We are keeping to that vision of 4 levels of stacks, and this lower level is the lowest of those 4 levels. So being able to tie them all together atmospherically, visually, we thought was a good plan. And that opening in the floor allows daylight to make it down to this lower level. All the spaces that are in this tan color are public spaces. Everything that's not colored in is a staff area. And so these are the public spaces in the in the lower level. So going back to that main level and then going up one is the mezzanine level. And so this is, again, something that exists in that circulation hall, where there's a thin row, 6 foot, so it's not terribly thin, but a thinnish row of mezzanine, where the book stacks would line the walls of that mezzanine, very much like is happening in all of the historic halls. And so the height underneath that mezzanine will be 7 feet, just like it is in the current stack area. The reason that this is different is that it's not covering an entire very large space. So you have a low ceiling, and then you have this big opening. And that big opening allows you to get relief from what might otherwise feel like a low space underneath the mezzanine. Going up 1 level is the 2nd floor, and this would be the top level of that circulation hall. And you'll see there's a wider area on the west side so that we can get more book stacks in there. Around on the long sides, there's again a wall-based stack, and then adequate space for you to circulate past it. And you'll notice that the elevator connects all of these levels. We do have a special space that I'll point out here, which is the gallery space up at the top of this page. And it's one of the spaces to serve one of the community needs or requests that we're proposing be a local art gallery in some form. It might be artist studios on some rotating basis. That's an operational aspect that will be figured out as we go, but we are preserving that space, which has great daylight coming in and northern light, so it's great for artists as an art gallery. So here's an image, an axonometric image of that circulation hall. So as you see around the perimeter, our book stacks. So this is an image with the roof taken off, so you don't see those skylights, but they're up above this image. And you can see that there are these layers of mezzanines that all have book stacks in them. I should have mentioned the circulation desk is being relocated from that the main hall into the circulation hall for a couple of reasons, and it's so important. I'm actually going to go backwards here for a second. So this is the circulation desk. It used to be right here, and people coming in from the north had to kind of walk around to get to that circulation desk. By taking the existing desk but relocating it and rotating it 90 degrees, we put it in a position of control so that whether you come in from the north or from the south, you're in a position where you see the circulation desk, and the staff at the circulation desk can know and see the patrons and be able to help them effectively. I guess since I'm here, I'll also point out the new restrooms are just off of that Great Hall as well. Okay, so moving back to this. Yeah, you see this connection between the Great Hall and the Circulation Hall. This is an existing opening. This is not a new opening. And we are just taking advantage of this existing opening to really help connect these two spaces together so that even though they're serving slightly different interests or different needs, they're connected so that they're working in harmony. And here's an in-progress rendering of what the Circulation Hall looks like. See all the layers of books. These book stacks are 7 feet tall so that it's easy for someone to access the top shelf. And it's just this wonderful room filled with books. And this harkens back to many historic libraries, but it's also done in a way that accommodates the current services and the current sensibilities in the space. You can see the light coming in from the skylights, and then over here is that opening down to the lower level. So taken from the circulation desk, this is the view that the staff will have of the space, being able to really look across. And for safety, security, wayfinding, camaraderie, you'll be able to see your friend on the first mezzanine while you're standing on the second one by looking across the space. It's very open and we think inviting. This is a view from the Great Hall looking in towards that existing opening into the Circulation Hall. And this is a work in progress. We don't intend to have people staring at the legs of people walking on that mezzanine. So the railings haven't really been designed yet. That will be forthcoming as design progresses. All right, so I want to talk a bit about book count because this is something that's very important. We just took out this stack area, and so we're sure that everyone's wondering where all the books are going back into. And so we spent a lot of time. We've got one of our staff members who's been dedicated to working with one of Tim's staff members to make sure that we've got all of the book stacks and shelving accounted for properly. And so in this reimagined layout, we are accommodating 12,500 lineal feet of book shelving, which is what is needed and what is being provided for serving the library collection. So it's been quite an effort to make sure we were doing that and getting the books in the right places. And the blue on these other little diagrams shows you all the places where book stacks are. Talk briefly about the lower level. So again, we're very interested in leveraging opportunities and doing more good with, having one action do multiple good things. And one of the things that we immediately noticed about the lower level is that there were 7 different elevations on this lower level, connected with stairs, a couple of ramps that weren't really compliant, and in some cases not connected to each other at all. You can't walk from the east end of the lower level to the west end currently, and therefore these services are all disassociated. In order for us to use this as the library goes forward, use this lower level, it is critical that we address accessibility. And that can be done in a number of ways, but it has to be accessible to people with disabilities, otherwise we cannot legally use it. And that would mean this whole large area of space would be out of commission for the library staff or public to use. So we started looking at how to accomplish this, and we found that we needed to improve the foundations to do the seismic repair work. The foundations, while they are reinforced concrete, they're not well reinforced, and the seismic repairs require improvements to those foundations. To get to the foundations, we have to take out the slab on grade, Once we take the slab-on grade out, we have the opportunity to put it back in at a level, at an even level, so that we can make this entire space level and accessible. And so that is what we're proposing to do. When that slab comes out, we put it back in at a common level. And in this section, you can see that some of the footings are higher. That's how we established what level that could be at, so that we were able to even this out across the space. Lower level utilization. We also started getting a little more creative on how to service ducts, how to get all those ducts that are hidden in the walls where they need to be without just starting at one end and going to the other, which is what's currently done. And we found that if we made 2 mechanical rooms instead of 1, we could get smaller ducts and not have to go as far because they're distributing to an area that's more localized to the individual mechanical rooms. And so this image in the middle is one of our staff who are looking in this space that's directly under the circulation, under the Great Hall. And it is filled with ducts. It is dusty, it is nasty, and you can't use any of it at the moment. As we go forward and relocate these mechanical rooms, you'll be able to, we'll be able to redistribute how those ducts serve the walls in such a manner that we can regain space for usable purposes. So the studio is in such a space. You'll see that there's an area below the studio, which is where we're reserving it for access for the ducts into the wall. But that studio is a space that would not have been possible to utilize without making this move. And then those other 2 gray areas, these are staff areas that are able to be recaptured by our reconfiguration of the mechanical rooms and how they serve the ductwork. From accessibility, just a little diagram to show you all of the various accessible interventions that are needed. We need a new ramp on the north entry to get people from the parking lot up to the library main level. Currently, there is a wheelchair lift, which is not beloved by anybody. And it's not really seen as an equal accommodation for people with disabilities. It does nothing for a parent with a stroller. And so by putting in a ramp, we can serve all of those needs. The ramp would start at the base of the stair and end at the top of the stair so that people are traversing in the same traffic pattern and the same walking pattern as someone who does not need to utilize the ramp. I already mentioned the elevators. In the front of the building, we also, this is a building on a little hill. We've got a series of stairs that take you from Walnut Street up to the courtyard, and then from the courtyard again up into the building. And we need to address both of those. And so we've got a series of sloped walks and ramps that will allow us to get up to the courtyard level. And then from the courtyard level, another ramp that gets us to this other area, which is level with the main floor of the building. Courtyard, for those who know, has multiple levels. The middle is lower, and the 2 sides are level with the inside of the building. And so this was a tricky thing to do without altering the character of the courtyard. And so this is a visualization of the north entrance that shows you the ramp that we just talked about. And where it starts at the base and ends at the top. Here's another view of what that north entrance looks like with that intervention of the new ramp. And this is a view of, a bird's eye view of the library from the south. So this would be Walnut Street looking at the south entrance. And so this side of the library is very much the same. This sloped walk gets you, and a sloped walk is a walk that's less than 5%, so you don't need handrails. It's considered easy to navigate. So the sloped walk gets you to the mid-landing of the stair, where you can cross over and take a ramp up to the courtyard level, and then you saw that other ramp from the courtyard. I mentioned public restrooms, so we have new public restrooms on both the main level as well as on the lower level. So just off the Great Hall, we have new multi-occupant restrooms. We have water fountains with bottle filling stations as well. And we also have new restrooms in the Children's Hall that can be used not only by a child, but also they're large enough that a parent can join them to take care of them. And this image on the left are these tiny little existing bathrooms that are there. They are very, very small, and I think this is any improvement to these would be very welcome. The auditorium, we've made a lot of changes, not to the auditorium itself as much as to the support spaces that serve the auditorium. There is an accessibility with the auditorium as well. You can't get up on the stage either from the audience or from backstage. And we're solving both of those. There's a wheelchair lift to get up on stage from the audience. And then we're putting in a stop on our new elevator to take advantage of that new elevator to get access to the backstage for performers. So we don't have to put in something new, we just have to add a stop there. And you can see by the magnitude of the orange color how much more backstage auditorium support space we've been able to put in. Includes a pantry that'll help with all the many events, proper AV room, piano storage for the 2 pianos that exist and really need a place to be out of the way, a deeper stage which will accommodate better functions, more functions, new green rooms, dressing rooms, and a toilet that is available to the performers. Meeting rooms for public use. We are adding 4 smaller study rooms and 2 larger meeting rooms. These are being added in one of the non-historic wings. And so the main building was built 100 years ago, but there were 2 wings that were added on the east side and a small addition on the west side that was done in the 60s. And so we're adding these meeting rooms into the 1960s addition so that we're not interrupting the historic fabric of the historic halls. And then the boardroom, which is a really special find. So the boardroom is up on the 2nd level on the west end of the Great Hall. And you climb a stair and you can get up to that landing right now. And currently there's a 3rd level up above that as well. I take another narrow stair and get up to another office up above. And we found that that 3rd level was not historic. It was added at some point. It's a little ambiguous as exactly when. And by removing that 3rd level that's non-historic, we uncover a beautiful arched window that's a replica of the one on the east side. I shouldn't say replica, it's original historic, but it's the same as the mirror of the one on the east side. And it really creates this incredible opportunity for this room. And I've got an image to show you apparently in a minute, not exactly where I thought it was going to be, but it'll be shortly here and I'll show you that. And then a lot of space for flexible events. The studio is a flexible event space, the innovation lab, the Great Hall. There's a space in the circulation hall on that main level that can have special events in it, and the courtyard. And all right, so here is that image of the boardroom. You see that beautiful arched window that when the 3rd floor is removed suddenly comes back to purpose. And this ceiling is what the ceiling looked like previously in this space. And it just creates a beautiful high volume space that is a really special space in the building. And this is a space that nonprofits can utilize for their board meetings and things of that nature. All right, I'm going to ask Dean Howell, who's our Director of Landscape Architecture at Gruen Associates, to talk a little bit about the site and the landscape.
Thank you, Deborah. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to go over a little bit of our landscape progress, design progress, as we go throughout. So as we have started out with looking at our different goals for the landscape, we really wanted to honor the historical significance of the building itself, the library, the classical lines of the garden itself, but we also wanted to update the landscape and make it more resilient, climate change, also introducing California native plants, which in turn would then create a biodiversity and pollinator garden as well, make it a pollinator-friendly garden, attracting native insects and bees and butterflies to the garden itself. And then finally, we wanted to make it really a learning garden, a place for people to come and whether that's plant ID or interpretive signage, to really create that sort of extension of learning from the library interior space to the exterior space, the outdoor spaces. So this is just an overview of the site itself. We looked at the north entry and the south entry, of course, enhancing that entry sequence and the landscape at that entry. The north entry, of course, is one of the main ways that people enter into the library, and so really creating also the universal access that Deborah had discussed, but creating a little bit more enhanced entrance with landscaping and more mature trees and palms. And also looking at the layout of the parking, which we'll talk about in a second. The south entry in the courtyard, we really wanted to honor that classical design of the south entry with the hedges and look at the mature trees, the olive trees and the mature junipers, and really accentuate that, as well as creating accessible pathways into the library and restoring that historic character. And then in the courtyard, of course, retaining the historic palms that are there, that have been there, and really, preserving that facade of the building. Then on the west side, really creating something we're calling the library park, really created amongst the mature trees that are there, and it will be a community benefit beyond just the library users and the kids, and really for all people in Pasadena. So we looked at the parking lot layout. We really wanted to make it a little bit more intuitive. There's a one-way circulation through most of the layout now. We've removed one existing driveway to improve circulation. We've added potential EV parking spots. We have wider drive aisles that allow for better circulation on two ends. And then we've added accessible spaces. We've increased the size of the stalls to make them code compliant, and made the ADA accessible stalls also compliant as well. We've added, landscape and other opportunities for shading for the parking with trees and landscaping. But the main introduction of the landscape would be in this library park. And in this park, as you can see from this plan view, we'd have an outdoor story time classroom at the very top. That would be permeable paving and that elliptical shape there. From the interpretive images, you can see the different kind of seating that might be there. That we've taken a cue from the bas-relief architectural elements that are around the doorway in the courtyard, and using that to create these areas for kids. Could have story time, could have outdoor classroom. And then as you move down into from this flexible area into this sort of more of a meandering path between two sort of mounds where people can sit, and there could be more areas for people for reading. You get to the bottom area, and this would be a labyrinth garden that would be surrounding the existing olive tree that's there, with seating. And in this labyrinth garden, there could be interactive play elements, where kids could make musical notes from different elements that we might have within that labyrinth garden as well. So really just creating this more of a park-like setting on the west side for the kids to enjoy, for library users to enjoy, and for all people from in Pasadena to enjoy.
Okay, so last little bit here, talk about what our next steps are on the timeline for them. So we're looking, as Chris mentioned, in early 2024 to be going to City Council to talk about a funding strategy, but also to show them our progress on schematic design. We will be dealing with, we are currently doing a cost estimate on our schematic design. That'll be complete sometime in the very beginning of next year. And we expect to roll right into design development, where we take things such as the railings and the exact nature of how things really look, what exact finishes and developed design elements are, and really get more into the details on those. Some of the things we'll do during design development is, figure out where all the power outlets should be and do seating layouts to, talk about different areas of seating and use for these spaces. So that's something that we'll come back and share with you when that is further, well, when we're into it, and then when we get some development on that. And following that, we will do a very detailed cost estimate. And after that, we'll roll into construction documents, go through plan check, bid, and award of the construction contract. We estimate that construction will take between 30 and 36 months, and that'll proceed based on whether there's funding for this project. So we are in pursuit of funding right now. So that is the end of our presentation. Now is a time when we really want to hear from you all, get input from you, get your comments, things that you think we might, program spaces that we might need but not have mentioned, things that you think aren't necessary, and that you would like us to use the space in a different manner. Maybe instead of the gallery, you want a meditation room. I don't know. But this would be the time when we would want to hear from you on that. So we invite anyone who has a question to come on up to the microphone, I think is the protocol. Is that right, Leslie? I guess. Okay. And if you could just state your name and whether you're a resident and what your question is.
Hi, I'm Trudy. Is it on? Okay.
Yep, there you
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Trudy Anderson, and I'm from Tuesday Musicale. And I have been asked to address the presidium that goes across the top of the stage.
Yes.
Apparently, a lot of times the sound stays in the back instead of projecting out.
Okay.
Is there any way to open that up or do something inside?
We will look at that with our acoustician.
Okay.
And that's a very good input. We have not gotten that before, so thank you for that. I will say the stage is getting deeper in two directions, but one of them will help and one of them won't help. So we will definitely look at that with our acoustician and make sure we have the right absorptive and reflective surfaces in there to help the sound make its way up.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, our pleasure. Thank you for that feedback. I hope you saw the piano locations that we put in the auditorium there. We gave you a permanent place for the pianos to not be on the floor.
Hello, my name is Felicia Resnick. I'm a resident. This circulation hall looks nothing like the current library. And this is a historic building, and all we want is the earthquake retrofit. You've completely changed the library there. Like, for instance, the California missions had unreinforced masonry, and they've all been rebuilt. Many of them have been rebuilt. The one in Solvang spent $500,000. There's another one up north that was $750,000. The San Gabriel spent $1 million to earthquake retrofit their unreinforced masonry.
I'm sorry, you're mentioning the missions?
Yes, and that
Okay.
includes attaching the roof to the walls, which I know this library needs. I read on the California State Retrofit that you're supposed to do minimal adjustments to the buildings to allow for future technology improvements in earthquake retrofitting. You're not, this is a historic building, you're completely rebuilding it, which we don't want. Any technology upgrades you propose now are going to be completely out of date in 5 years. The city's going to give free internet, they think, to most residents in the fairly near future. This is going to take a lot of time. We just need the earthquake retrofit. We don't want a rebuilt. This library, this picture reminds me of that Glendale brutalist one you guys were showing. And we don't want a brutalist one. We want our historic library the way it is now. I think the bathrooms are fine. I like the way the bathrooms are now. I don't want the stacks moved. I like the stacks the way they are. I don't want skylights. Those skylights look weird. They're completely different from the way the library looks now. There are many retrofits in Los Angeles. You don't need to rebuild them. You're completely rebuilding the library. I just want it to look the way it does now. Just do the earthquake retrofit, please.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. I will just make a couple of comments just to make sure that you understand what's there now. So this is maybe in reverse order, but the skylights were original to the building. They are there now. You just can't see them because of the way the stacks cover them up. That stack area that's currently there now was not original to the building. That was put in the 1980s and is definitely not in character of the historic building. And so we're trying to navigate between we're making interventions in spaces that had already been modified, as opposed to making interventions in spaces that had not been modified. And that is consistent with the advice we're getting from our historic consultant. And relative to the tech updates, that will be outdated in 5 years. You can imagine the ones that are there now are very outdated already. But I do appreciate your comments. We've taken good notes, and we will certainly factor them into our further discussions on what we're doing and see if there's a way to address your comments. Hello.
I'm Valerie Siegel, and I'd like to share with you my feeling of coming in from the north entrance. I've always felt that it was kind of scary to come in. It was always very enclosed and dark. You had to go around the corner to get to the main hall. But when I saw in your presentation this really radical change to both entrances, it didn't feel right to me. I don't think it's consistent with the integrity of the first requirement that the community has laid out for you, which is to maintain the historic flavor. There's many things I like about it, but if I were in that room, it wouldn't feel like the Pasadena Public Library to me. So what I would like, Tim, if you could maybe, in a smaller venue, bring this presentation to more people. I'd like the board of the Linda Vista Library Associates to be able to see this, because we would want to be involved in any capital campaign that you had or will have. And please consider that there's just a lot of people in Pasadena that are very invested in the public library. And informal conversations that I've had with people, very informal, they've always said to me, maintain the historical character. So I'd be really careful about trying to promote this the way it is now. You may alter maybe the color of it, make it more wood paneled or, something, whatever. I'm not telling you you're the design expert. And when it comes to the landscaping, I would say more trees. Don't make it complicated for children. hopscotch is only, 10 squares. And I think it looks interesting, and I love landscaping, and I will look forward to seeing what your future plans are, but don't make it complicated for children.
Thank you very much.
Valerie, thank you, and I will reach out to you about that presentation that you asked about. Happy to do that.
Good evening. My name is John Fauver. I just wanted to ask a follow-up questions on some of the things presented tonight. I thank you for the presentation. It's great graphics, I have to say. It's very powerful. So I wanted to follow up a couple of particular points here. One question I had was that there was a cost estimate done in October of 2021 at $111 million. Mm-hmm. That number is now about $150 million. But what I wanted to ask was, how could they do a cost estimate if they didn't have a basic design? How did that happen? I saw the materials on the city board, and it sort of came out of the air. There wasn't any explanation. I did see that KPFF had done a bid proposal at about the same time, and that had some detail to it. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to figure that out. Is how did they do the 2021 cost estimate of $111 million?
I could speak to that, Mr. Fauver. So in summer of 2021, a couple months after it was recognized that the building needed to be retrofitted, the city manager at the time was asking us about a sense of what the scope might be and also an approximate cost. Now, mind you, we hadn't done all the due diligence that we have been working on for the past 2 years, and like you said, nor did we have a design consultant on hand, and none of the design was done. So typically at that point, we did have a professional cost estimator come in and just look in a sense of square footage overall and based on other similar type of projects. So I think that was kind of an average number at the time. So it was really an order of magnitude. It wasn't necessarily what I would call a cost estimate.
Right.
But now that, we are now continuing and moving forward. Right now, we did have a cost plan put together.
I understand. I was just trying to focus on that. I just couldn't understand it. It seemed to come out of the blue, honestly. And I understand. So you take roughly a square footage, you multiply the square footage times more or less average cost.
Yeah, in a sense, that's what it was.
Come up with the number. Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
It did not include the sense of comprehensive,
right, which we now have. No, I appreciate that.
Historic preservation and so on.
Right. Okay. Then I wanted to ask Tim about a couple of questions. One was you said there had been a review with another agency, another group had done a kind of a questionnaire, and I wondered what you were talking about. It was what do we need? And you said that the program committee had views that were consistent with some other questionnaire. And what is that?
I think I know what you're asking about. So the programming committee was formed and began meeting in September of 2022, met over the course of several months and produced a report, their recommendations, the vision for the project, which included a very strong recommendation to continue the community engagement process. And Deborah's team was charged with creating a robust community engagement plan, and her findings have agreed with the recommendations of the community programming committee. There has not been a great deal of disagreement between what that original committee put forth and what we've found by listening to the community since then.
Okay, okay. Did you do any polling? That was the other.
Thanks. That's where I was. So we're trying to collect feedback through a variety of mechanisms, and one of the, if I could ask Deborah to go to the last slide.
Yeah, I was going to
you read
say,
my
that
mind.
was teed up nicely.
I know that sometimes, I appreciate everyone being here, and I know that not everybody may be comfortable coming up to the microphone and giving input or asking questions, so I appreciate it. On the screen now is 2 QR codes. If you take your phone out and put your camera on and turn them toward the screen, the one on the left will take you to the Retrofit project webpage, where you can see progress in the project. The one on the right is a community survey where you could give
the opposite, but yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I'm a little dyslexic. So you could provide input through that online survey if you wish. So,
No, but that's not my question. Was there a polling of the citizens? I understand that you hear people, random people stand up with random ideas that may be good, may not be so good, who's to say, but what I mean was, did you poll the citizens? Did you go out and you say, how much do we need more space below? Should we have more books, less books? That kind of a polling. I take it the answer is no, but I just was curious.
There has not been a poll that asks those questions. The one on the screen now gets at those similar issues. What type of programming what type of uses would you like to see in the library? That's the current survey that's up now.
I'm sorry, that was random responses to the website. Is that right? It wasn't that you went out to 1,000 citizens and said, the people we put on our committee think these are good ideas, or should we have bigger library, bigger bathrooms? Should we, et cetera.
Right.
That kind of a poll is, what do you really want? Which is that's quite different than comment if you want to.
Thank you. Yeah, we will continue to try to seek feedback through as many different channels as we can.
Okay,
Thank you.
I appreciate that. The answer is no, there wasn't any polling. So then here's the other question that I had. When we had the vote on the reenactment of the parcel tax for the ongoing expenses, I was astounded to see the representations that all of the services that were being provided before the close of the library would be continued to be provided at exactly the same level for the next 15 years. And that all of the meetings and virtually all of the services were now being provided through the branch libraries. I want to say the city website says there are 10. They added Villa Park. But I wondered if there had been any current statistics on how many meetings weren't occurring or how many services were not being provided. And there was some data on that at the time, and I wonder if there's any current data on it.
Thank you for the question. Let's go back to the number of branches. We do have 9 permanent branch libraries, and we've added a temporary one at Jefferson
Okay, maybe
Elementary
that's
School.
the 10th, right?
Is the 10th
It shows 10
permanent
on the
one.
website
Yeah.
if you count them
Right.
on the website. But no, all
Yeah.
right. Right. Now, all those branches,
Yeah.
and then the other services are available. There are a lot of adjacent libraries around here. There's a good one in South Pass, et cetera, et cetera. And nearly everything, all the information you need is nearly all the information in the world is online. So I don't know if anyone's missing any information. I know there are 300,000 books in the stacks we can't get to, but I don't know how much that's hurting us. That's what I'm trying to ask.
Thanks for the question. I would say that we are not at the capacity that we are when Central Library was open. And I could give you a lot of examples of things that we are not able to offer now, or services that we are offering now that take a much longer time than they would. For example, the ability to go in and browse the shelves yourself and pick out the book that you want and check it out
No, that's
in
just
minutes
gone. I understand that.
will take much longer now.
Well,
while
it's
the
not
Central
even
Library is
quite
closed.
possible.
So
I mean,
there's a
you do it
difference
online,
between.
maybe, right.
Thanks. Yeah. So there is a difference in the number of services and a difference in our ability to do them in a timely manner.
Right.
Both.
I just want to compliment the branches. I go to the Santa Fe branch. They have a lot of meetings and great services. And there's the thing about that is that when they built the Central Library, it was the library, basically. There was one other branch. But now there are 9 other branches. And you want to say that's a lot of service, which is, I think, a good thing. But I just wanted to know how much we were hurting. Okay, now then I wanted to, I think I have one other question. it has to do with the parking lot. You know, I go to the parking lot, and sometimes it's full. And I used to go to the parking lot, and sometimes it's full. And I have the very clear sense that a lot of lawyers at the courthouse are filling it up, and that there's no real control on the use of the parking lot. There are hardly any free parking lots in Pasadena, so it's very attractive. I wondered if I couldn't understand whether they did add new space or they didn't add new space, and how the spaces serve the demand. Is there any information about that?
Yeah, so I can talk a bit about that.
Yeah.
So we're reconfiguring the lot. So one of the things that we heard anecdotally from many people was how often there were conflicts between cars that were head-on, and we started looking into it, and we found that the drive aisles were all undersized. And added to that,
what did you say, the what?
The drive aisles were too narrow.
Oh, yes,
they weren't
right.
big enough for 2 cars to pass. They were only 20 feet wide, and 2 cars couldn't pass.
Right.
And then on top of that, the stalls were only 16 feet deep. So too narrow a drive aisle and too short a stall meant that cars were poking out into the drive aisle, making it even narrower. And so there were often head-on cars driving in opposite directions head-on. So the parking lot has spaces, but they're not very easy to use. And when people have cars that are bigger than the 2 small spaces, they take up 2 spaces instead of 1. So it's not very efficiently used either. So we're reconfiguring it so that we're maintaining basically the same number of spaces. Might be a couple less than are there right now. But by doing one-way circulation and making the stalls the proper size, making diagonal parking, and we are, impacting some of those walking islands that were in between that are basically hardscaped. And there's some trees in there, but there's a lot of paving as well. And so by reconfiguring it, we can actually make the spaces work better, function better, and mitigate the potential for people to cross each other.
Let me clarify my question.
Okay, sure.
Right. I had the feeling that the parking is inadequate now and will be more inadequate once we have the best library in the world. so I wonder if there's any way of dealing with the increased volume that we're likely to have, or even the old volume. The old volume is, it's overcrowded long times during the day, and there's no enforcement that it's for library use. There might be a way of getting lawyers out of there earlier in the morning, and when you've got multiple meetings going on, there just isn't any place to park in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it, and I know we have heard similar comments about shortage of parking. I mean, we are trying to do our best within the space that it is available to make it the best use that we can for the community. But aside from having to do more work, whether on site or finding elsewhere, it's really beyond the focus of this project, but it's certainly one that we are trying to do our best.
Yeah, no, let me give you the draconian thing that's going on in Pasadena is that some commercial lots are starting to put in meters. So that's one way of limiting the use. And others are, requiring, the one in Los Angeles requires a stamp that you went in the library. And something like that might get faster turnover.
It's a good suggestion, and we'll definitely take that to heart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alex Grosjean. I've been a Pasadena resident for over a decade now. I'm proud to love it here, intend to stay forever. I want to come up and actually say something a little different about how excited I am about the project. I think a lot of thought has gone into this design, and I know we're just hearing an hour presentation for years of work and thought and discussion, and so I just want to say I'm really excited about how you're taking the time to think about how to preserve the library, but also make it relevant and useful for generations to come. I love the idea of using the seismic retrofit and even life safety systems, and being in the mindset of, while we're in there and doing all this work and spending all this time in this really invasive upgrades, let's do some other modest improvements. And so I'm really excited about the circulation hall and the mezzanines and kind of how we're preserving but improving and really making a nice, beautiful space with a ton of natural light. And I appreciate that you're kind of taking this time to do all this community input. I think it seems like you're doing more than I would have expected, and I think that's really generous. And so my only question, I think, is a little different. It's more programmatic. So I love the idea of having a place to actually read a book. I want to use a library for a library, and I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit about places to actually read, preferably with tons of natural light, but at least some.
Sure. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, go for it.
No, Pastor, thank you for the comments. One thing that did not come out in this presentation, because we really did focus on it, I think, at the last community presentation, is that the process of retrofitting this building does include this very careful cataloging of all the historic elements that will need to be removed and then replaced at the completion of the project. So many of the spaces that we didn't cover today, the Great Hall, the Humanities Wing, the Reference Wing, will be preserved and look just as they did when Myron Hunt opened the building. The more dramatic changes, I'll use that word for lack of a better word, that we're seeing today, are in areas that are not are not touching those character-defining spaces. So the circulation hall, those 4 stacks of floors that we would walk into if we went into the building now are not original to the building.
Right.
And I think we do need to listen to the entire community to get that room right, like that we don't want it to, we want it to be in conversation with the building and not compete with the Great Hall. But there's an opportunity to make an enhancement there. Your question about reading spaces, yes, right. There will be plenty of areas in the library for study and for reading, and I invite everybody at the end of the meeting to take a look at the renderings that are on display on the easels to see some of those spaces there.
Yeah, and one of the things that will really come about in the next phase of our design is looking at how to create different character of spaces and how many different types of spaces there are. What we do know from our research and discussions with people is that people like to work and study in very different manners. Some people want to be at a rigid table with a wood chair. Others want to be, sitting in a loungy chair and, being able to put their feet up. We had some people say, please make sure there's a space I can sit on the floor and read a book. So we need to be cognizant of all the different ways that people like to utilize a library, study, work, read, and make sure that we're making a variety of spaces. So there won't be just one type of seating area. There will be many different types of seating areas. Some small groups, some individual, so that you don't have to be sitting near another person. Some larger groups where people can have conversations without annoying the people around them. But thank you for that question.
Thank you. Can't wait to see it, and thanks for all your hard work.
When is the next town hall like this going to be? I just barely heard about this one in time. You flashed it on the screen, I thought, but it was too fast. I couldn't see it.
We have one in January. Leslie, do you know when that is? Okay. It is TBD at this moment, but we will try and get the word out as early as we possibly can.
And what's the current estimate? I know the last time you had the last meeting, it was 250 plus 90 million if we didn't act quickly. So what's the current estimate, please?
Yeah, so the construction costs are approximately 150 million. This is going back to that same budget, and the project costs are 195 million, and that's what was discussed with City Council.
Okay, because at the last meeting you said 250 million, and then plus it was going to be
No,
another
no,
nine-
no, it was never
and then it was
that.
going to be another 90 million if we did act quickly.
No, not that at all. I'm sorry. And
Presentation is online.
it is 175 to 195 million was the project cost estimate. So let me just explain that project costs includes what's called soft costs and hard costs. So it's an all-in number. It includes construction contingency, and it includes escalation, which is the anticipation of how much more things will cost when we're in the middle of construction. And so this is really a number that factored everything in. And so the award of the construction will be less than the range of the project costs.
And the construction includes fees and everything like that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that?
That's going to include fees and everything else?
Yeah. Yeah. The one caution or caveat I should make is that this is based on a point in time. If for some reason the schedule is not met, those costs will go up.
That's going to be the extra 90 million you predicted last time, right?
I'm
the last
sorry for
meeting.
somebody who doesn't.
At the last meeting, the one at Jefferson, no, you said.
Oh, so I think I know what you might be referring to. So
The one that was over on Fair Oaks. That
yeah,
was the one where
so
you said
we
90
did
million.
discuss with City Council that there are things that have to be done to the building and things that don't have to be done to the building right now to remove the red tag. And the things that have to be done to remove the red tag are, that's the 150 million. That's the project cost for those things. And the other 42 million are the, I'll say the other things such as upgrading the mechanical system, which doesn't have to be done to lift the red tag, but if it's done, that's an added cost, and Wi-Fi, et cetera. So the 175 to 195 was everything, including all of the nice, the mechanical system and the Wi-Fi and all of that. If we pare it back to only what's needed to lift the red tag, that goes down to a 150 million project. The caution was that $42 million, if we do that in the future, and so the idea being you're not going to complete a project and then immediately do these other things, that wouldn't make any sense. So we had our cost estimator take a thought of, if you complete the building, so it reopens in 2028, and then 5 years later, you decide you're going to replace the mechanical system and enhance the Wi-Fi and all those other things, that $42 million goes up to $90 million. So that's where the 90 comes in. If you don't do those things that are not required but prudent to do, if you don't do those right now, their cost will increase because of the cost of money and escalation over time. So I think that might be what you're referring to. But our base project, all in, with every contingency thought of, every fee, plan check fees, inspection fees, furniture, all in, 175 to 195 is the cost plan range for that total project cost with everything.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Newquist, and I am a third-generation Pasadena resident, and I'm raising my 5 kids here as well. Spent many wonderful hours in this library with my kids, and I can vouch for that lift that you had. So glad that that's going to be a ramp now. Getting strollers up and down is terrible. And thank you for talking about the seating as well. The garden looks beautiful. I would request some seating with a back to be able to sit and enjoy reading outside. And
that's
then,
actually a code requirement, so yes, we absolutely will do that.
Great. And then I appreciate you mentioning also how you've tried to maintain the historic look of like the great room. I love the dark wood and some of those other rooms we weren't able to see. This is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Love the lighting and everything. I can understand the concern. It maybe seems much more modern in, contrast to the historical look of the rest of the library, but I know that you were doing your best to maintain that, so I appreciate that. And my final question is, you mentioned about funding from the state, grants and things like that. Is there funding that you are asking for from residents and just fundraising in general to help with this project, or is it strictly from the state, city, things like that?
Thank you for asking. The city staff is committed to pursuing every available dollar for the construction phase of this project that we can find. So that will mean applying for grants from every entity that we can find: federal, state, nonprofit, philanthropy. We have a good partner with an institution called the Pasadena Public Library Foundation, which for several decades has had funds made available for capital improvement projects at Central Library. They have set up a donation link for people that may be interested in contributing to this fund. And then concurrent with all of those avenues that we will be pursuing, if we are not able to raise the full amount that is needed for construction, we are on a timeline that would allow City Council to consider going to the public with a bond to fund the construction for any difference that needs to be made up that we're not able to raise in the interim. So, yeah. No decision has been made on that yet, but we're trying to meet the deadline that would be possible potentially to go to voters in November of 2024 if we needed to.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, please.
Good evening. My name is Jim Spencer. I'm an architect, and I'm also, there are 3 other architects here in attendance, all members of the AIA Pasadena and Foothill chapter. I don't think that any one of us anymore questions the need for some form of retrofit on the library. In the early stages, we thought maybe the building would calculate and structural retrofit wouldn't be needed. But I think most can accept that the building is better than we thought, but still not good enough. There are 3 structural retrofit schemes that have been proposed. One is to cut the brick out and put in columns to support the roof and the floors. The second one is what they call base isolation that was done for the City Hall, and along with the columns, so of course that one becomes more expensive. And then the third is the shear wall solution, which is the current preferred method. And what we're proposing is a 4th solution that has been done particularly with buildings that have character-defining features both on the interior and the exterior, where this is conundrum of what do you do, with the shear wall solution, you have to cut out roughly 12 inches of all the brick from floor to all the way to the structure up above. I calculated somewhere in the range of 4,000 to 5,000 tons of brick being taken out of the building, and then somewhere around 5,000 tons to 6,000 tons of concrete being added. So what we're trying to do and encourage you to hire a structural engineer who is experienced with the center core method, which is the 4th possible alternative. It's a method where you drill into the walls all the way from the roof down into the foundation, and you anchor the building with steel where the steel doesn't exist now. So that's the main gist of what we're saying, is that there's somebody out there that is capable of calculating it, and we urge you to hire them. Thank you.
We appreciate your comments, Jim. Can you, Jim, is it possible, Jim? I just, since you mentioned that you were speaking on behalf of 3 architects, can you, for our benefit, identify those 3 architects?
I couldn't hear what you said.
Since you said you were speaking on behalf of 2 other architects, can you identify them?
3. three, actually.
Or three other, okay. Can you tell us who they are? Just 'cause I'm
There's
curious.
Joe Catalano, Winston Thorne, who's been on the Technical Oversight Committee, and Richard McCann, who's in the far.
Great.
Both
Thank you.
Joe and Richard have done center court projects.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other comments or questions from our crowd here? Okay, well, hearing none, thank you all for spending your evening with us. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate the input that we've garnered. Hopefully you've appreciated hearing some greater detail. And we will keep you posted on the next one of these. Thanks.